What modern display do you use for your retro gaming today? Do you play on emulators on a modern PC and not really care about old hardware? Do you get your old hardware out, make sure it has RGB, and then pair it with an upscaler or a professional video monitor for ultimate picture quality? Or do you just say, hey, you know what? I can go to a thrift store and just plop down $5 and get a consumer set, and that's good enough for me. Now, I realize that to some of you, mentioning composite video or RF for gaming might sound like I just walked into a vampire convention with a plate full of garlic, but some people actually like the aesthetic of the old consumer set TVs, some even going so far as to get one that looks nice when paired with a certain console. And that brings us to this television, the Emerson EC10R, a RED television that absolutely screams 1980s. The font, the channel selectors, the big yellow power button. She's got the look. Now, this TV actually belongs to a friend of mine. He got it because he thought, hey, number one, it looks pretty cool. Number two, it would look really cool paired with a Japanese Famicom. And I agree with him. Unfortunately, there was one small problem with it that had to do with the switch for the inputs. And I took it from him saying, whatever, I can clean that switch and have you right back to normal. What I didn't realize was that there were a few other problems with the set that I'd have to tackle before returning it to him. So if you'd like to see a small restoration of this set and like electronics or CRTs in general, well, this one's going to be a little bit of a roller coaster, so join me.
I should probably start by saying that if you are a Kirby fan, you should know that there's a pink one. If anyone ever finds one of these, let me know. So Emerson is not the first brand I think of when someone says high-end CRT. The consumer features of this set sure stand out though. Starting at the back, there is a built-in antenna and then a small plug for an external antenna. There are no coaxial inputs or 300 ohm inputs. Continuing with the back of the set, the bottom left corner not only has RCA inputs but also RCA outputs. There is a slide switch in the center that can be used to switch between composite video and broadcast TV. That's the switch that is giving us problems. The input won't completely switch over from antenna to composite video. Yep, no remote control input selector for this set, you just had to reach around and switch it manually. In addition to your typical AC power, this set also has an input for DC power. There is a manual degauss button used to rid the screen of any impurities caused by magnetic interference. And here's the model. Wait, did you see that? There is actually a little window here to access focus on the flyback transformer inside the TV set. A flyback is used, among other things, to deliver high voltages to the CRT via this red wire and cap. This isn't normally a user adjustable option, but here is a little window saying, hey, focus control is right here. Stick a screwdriver in this hole to reboot your nervous system. Just kidding. Mostly. This is actually convenient these days as focus has probably drifted a bit on this set after 30 years, but it doesn't matter to me though because I have the set opened up anyway. Finally, the model number and some information are also on the back. It looks like this screen can get you up to channel 83. Let's move to the top. Up here we have a volume slider on the left side and the large yellow square power button on the right. Man, that is cool. 12 channel preset buttons that are very clicky and satisfying to press sit just above the screen. Notice they have letters instead of numbers. Opening the compartment gives access to the color, tint, brightness, contrast, and the automatic fine-tuning switch. The mini dials of mission control sit front and center with channel set controls for each of the letters. I believe this little slot to the right is where the wand would go to help you tweak these really small dials. On the subject of channels, if you look at the top above the screen, there are backlit numbers in front of the preset buttons. The channel numbers, as you know, are customizable, and you can remove the strip of numbers and customize it too if you wish. I am assuming the set came with a tree of punch-out numbers. This is a rather neat feature of an era long gone. Also on the front, you'll notice that this set has a protective plastic cover over the screen. The cover is rather dirty, like the rest of the set. If we look at one side, we can see that the TV is mono and also has a headphone jack. On the bottom, there is a bar that can be used to tilt the set upward, and there is a bit of damage to the pedestal of sorts. Maybe I can do something about that. Okay, let's power up and see what we can see. Now, unfortunately, I didn't catch it on camera, but after having the set up for a few minutes, it experienced a vertical collapse.
You recall that in previous videos I explained how a CRT television works, that there's an electron beam that actually draws all the way across the screen, top to bottom and left to right, and it happens really fast. Now in order for that to happen, the beam that shoots at the screen has to deflect. It has to be able to deflect horizontally and vertically. And so what you're seeing happen on this CRT is a capacitor has failed and it's experienced a partial vertical collapse. Everything is kind of squat now. It hasn't completely failed, in which case you just see a line all the way across the middle of the screen. But either way, it's not something that you really like to have. You want that picture to take up the whole space on the screen.
If we continue with testing, we arrive at the test for linearity. This puts some circles on the screen to help examine geometry. Those don't really look like circles to me. I mean, obviously we have some vertical collapse that should make them look a bit more like ovals, but they look more like eggs. This is definitely looking like a capacitor problem. You can see some of the same distortion in this grid pattern, and can see a bit more when I turn the contrast up high. The best fix for this is to not turn your contrast up so high. However, we'll see what we can do to improve it. Please understand that this video is meant for entertainment and not to serve as a how-to. It is dangerous to work inside of a TV set. Okay, so oftentimes people say it is the capacitors, even if they don't work on TVs. Those that do work on TVs will say it isn't always the capacitors. Stop blaming caps for everything. And they have a point. Heck, the previous CRT repair video on this channel was a TV that turned on and off by itself, and the problem was caused by the front panel buttons. My general philosophy is, it isn't always the capacitors, but oftentimes, it is the capacitors. Or the caps are at least partially to blame. So with the exception of a bit of cleaning, both inside and out, I'm going to replace all 37 of the electrolytic capacitors in this set. I won't mess with or replace any of the ICs, resistors, transistors, ceramic caps, flyback picture tube, etc. I will only replace the electric caps, clean the controls, and tweak the pots. We'll see what it helps and what it does not help. I usually just write down printed information from the caps on notebook paper. I get the info from them and set them aside to move to the next one. With the caps recorded, I transfer the information into a spreadsheet. I measure their sizes and record them here. I then order what I need from a site like DigiKey. With the capacitors ordered, let's turn our attention towards some of the cosmetic work. I'll remove the control panel from the set and then detach the circuit board underneath. 2 screws secure the power switch to the casing, and now the plastic is free of the electronics. The panel has quite a bit of grime, so we'll wash it in the sink with soap and water and let it dry. Next comes the electronics behind the control panel. They are rather filthy. The potentiometers you turn to adjust color, brightness, etc. feel a bit, well, gummy when you turn them. They don't turn as easily as you would like them to. You know, the more you think about the word gummy, the grosser it sounds. In any case, I'm using 2 types of spray here. One is contact cleaner that will help get things clean inside those pots. I'll turn them back and forth to work the cleaner across the contacts inside. And then I add a spray from the CRC 226 lubricant to make sure they stay easy to turn. I'll do this for each potentiometer. I can hook up this multimeter to the pots to make sure their resistance is stable whenever I'm not turning them. They look pretty good and hold their values. I also spray the AFC switch even though it probably won't be used. I did the same thing to the switch on the back, the original reason why I have this set in my possession. This cleaning made it better, but it still needed a second cleaning later. Next, that plastic screen that is in the front is held into place by 2 tabs, one to each side of the screen. This plastic needs a good cleaning, so I'll remove it. I used a plastic spudger to dislodge both of the tabs. The second tab gave me a bit of trouble, but it eventually popped out. For cleaning, I'll use some soap and water to get rid of the grime both on the inside and out. We'll dry it off with a paper towel and then let it air dry a bit more. This could probably use a much deeper scrub and some TLC for the scratches, but this alone should make it much more presentable. Now, before I get to the arrival and installation of the capacitors, there was one other thing I noticed. The power cord has this wad of electrical tape wrapped around the middle of it. I thought perhaps the cord got nicked at some point and figured I could take a look and maybe use some heat shrink tubing to make it look a bit nicer. But after getting the tape off, it turns out that the cord had been completely severed. The wires had only been twisted together, and these are actually 2 different power cords.
Have you ever thought about burning your house down?
I actually went to the trouble of soldering the wires together and using heat shrink tubing to try to do a more proper repair, but then I figured I'll just go buy a new replacement cord and solder it in. It's a high quality wire, and bonus, it is all in one piece. There is no strain relief for this cord, so I put a knot in it to keep it from ripping out of the TV if it gets pulled. Okay, so the capacitors have arrived and it is time to solder them in. Let's go. Oh, so get this. I missed one when I removed and inventoried them. The best part? It is most likely the most relevant capacitor to the vertical problem the set is experiencing. But good news, I ordered some extra caps and it just happens that I have an extra with the needed values. Although it takes a while, it is pretty satisfying to put fresh electrolytic caps in. I occasionally had to scrape away some old glue before dropping in the new ones, but it was overall a smooth operation. Moment of truth. And at first things were anticlimactic. Then I realized, oops, I turned down all the potentiometers to minimum for initial power up. With the pots turned back to a relatively normal setting, the image came back to life. Well, the vertical collapse is certainly gone. Let's check the linearity circles now.
Alright, so obviously at this point, the new capacitors are a lot better than the old capacitors. They have the same overall values printed on them, but they're much more efficient when placed in circuit. So the amount of power that's needed doesn't have to be cranked up as high, and that's kind of layman's way to put it, but that's the reason why you see so much overscan on the screen now. It's just the capacitors are that much better. So now we can actually dial down the vertical deflection a bit and get it to fit in the screen properly.
The potentiometer that controls vertical size is extremely easy to get to, and the location is quite obvious. It is right here. I nicknamed this pot Waldo. I don't know why. For safely tweaking the potentiometer while the TV is turned on, I picked up these anti-static alignment tools that come in this really nice pouch that is guaranteed to create all kinds of glare when you try to show it using your camera. The tools are non-conductive. They allow me to tweak settings on a power TV without a metal tool affecting a circuit, or me accidentally killing myself. That's a nice bonus. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to pick some up. I viewed multiple screens to dial in the vertical size. I ended up making some other changes to the set later that caused me to retweak it at that time, but you can see how a CRT can easily have the vertical size adjusted versus a fixed pixel display. You can also see how subjective and imprecise aspect ratio could be if you start messing with it. Next up, I started to adjust the screen in focus on the flyback transformer. The goal is to adjust the screen so that it has a nice bright picture, but not so high that it works the CRT too much, especially if you can see the retrace lines. Did you happen to watch the video on 525 line analog video? You can crank this thing up so high that you can actually see the electron beam getting back to the other side of the screen. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, let's turn those down. Okay, so there is a bit of an elephant in the room. This set is still exhibiting a voltage issue, as some of you probably noticed quite a bit earlier. More on that a bit later. Next up is the focus adjustment. It is a funny thing to show on camera because I am pointing a camera that is deliberately in autofocus at a screen for which I am changing the focus. We'll see if my video camera and the CRT can run the same play and score a focus touchdown. There, nice and sharp, plus bonus ghosting because, well, voltage problems. At this point, I started letting some game demos run. Streets of Rage has a bit of overscan on the sides in addition to the top and bottom. Various sets naturally had various amounts of overscan back in the day. Your friend's Panasonic overscan might be more than what you see on your RCA, etc. That said, this one has quite a bit more than usual, so we will need to do some more tweaking. Oh, remember that circle screen? Looks a lot better now, huh? This does show a bit of extra overscan on the left versus the right. I know the TV is at an angle, but there is about that much of a difference in overscan between left and right. So this next part is a bit of a hack that I don't recommend. I blindly adjusted the B+ voltage to shrink the screen a bit and therefore pull in the left and right sides ever so slightly. Ideally, we would have a service manual, check voltages, pinpoint where the problem is most likely happening, replace an appropriate component, dial in proper voltages, and get a better picture. But, for the purpose of this video, we are just making a minor tweak. to the B+ voltage to help things out. I'm sure this won't be the last TLC this set receives. With the adjustment in B+ made, the vertical can be retweaked to an appropriate size. I also thought I might address the plastic as it was dirty and a bit cloudy. I picked up this Novus plastic clean and shine as well as these scratch removers. I haven't used them before, so I'm going to be rather conservative with what I select. They came with this pamphlet that mentions what each one does and also all the various products that can benefit from them. We will see if they can make a difference on this red set. I'll leave a link for them in the description. If you have used this stuff before, let me know in the comments. The number 1 clean and shine did make a difference. I elected to try the number 2 fine scratch remover on the back of the set as a bit of a test, and it did seem to help smooth things a little bit, so I tried a bit on the top. You basically buff the scratch remover until it dries, and then use the clean and shine to clean off the residue. It didn't make things look brand new, but I do think it helped a lot versus what it looked like when I originally started. Sadly, it also turned it into a bit of a dust magnet. The only thing left now is to reattach the screen protector to the front. It could use a bit more work. Maybe all 3 of those Novus plastic polish system things would be worth using. For now, I'll just close the blinds, so it doesn't have the perfect light on it to accent the scratches. Let's fire up some Famicom games. So overall, I think we made a pretty good difference with this set. It isn't perfect, but I think it's a lot better than it was when I first got it.
Hopefully my friend will enjoy it when he gets it back and hooks up his Famicom. I hope you enjoyed watching this video as I tackled this TV set and tried to make it look a little bit better both on the outside and on the screen for retro gaming. I look forward to talking to you guys in the future and bringing you more videos such as this one. Happy gaming, and I'll talk to you soon.